Lisa Wheeler has worked very closely with Peggy Lanning, who's our guest curator on this exhibition. She'll be here shortly as well. But this wonderful catalog, Lisa worked with our designer Aaron on it and did a wonderful job with that. Peggy was heavily involved as well. And it says gallery copy on the ones that are up here. We'd like for you to leave those here if you would, so that people can enjoy them in the gallery. If you'd like one to take home, they are free in the museum store. Just stop by the store and get one. But leave these copies up here if you would, so people can enjoy them in the gallery, okay? Fair enough?
Yes. Yeah.
If you turn to the inside front of the count, it recognizes our generous sponsors for this exhibition, Susan and Bill Broadman. I know they're here somewhere. Wave your hands if you would. Also, Robin and Mike Farnes. They couldn't be with us tonight, but will be here later in the summer to see the show. And also our friends at WBHF Radio here in Cartersville, one of our great media partners. We love those folks over there. How about a round of applause for our sponsors? The catalog also has a checklist in the back with all the works, and there are also price lists over there in the bottom of the bin. So if you see something that you just have to have and want to take home, there is a price tag on it, or at least most of them. And I'm sure the artists would be happy to talk to you about that and put you in touch with the right folks and have you make an acquisition. Well, I'm going to tap dance and fill in the rest of the time. So this exhibition came as a result of a conversation that I had with Peggy Lanning, who's the guest curator. And she owned Turquoise Tortoise Gallery and Lanning Galleries in Sedona, Arizona for many, many years. How many of y'all been there, Sedona, Arizona? She was not in that Tlaquepaque area, just further south of there. On the left was her two galleries. Anybody ever go to her gallery, Turquoise Tortoise or Lanning? Got a few folks, okay? And she represented 4 or 5 of these artists for many, many, many years over that time. And we had a member trip up to northern Arizona maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were visiting Prescott and Wickenburg and Scottsdale. A few years earlier, we had done a trip and we had gone to Sedona and come to her gallery. And she found out we were coming there again. And she said, oh, are you coming to Sedona? And I said, no, I'm sorry, we're not. We're doing Wickenburg this time instead. She said, Wickenburg? Over Sedona? Really? Well, we were going to see the Cowgirl Up show at the Wickenburg Museum, and so we had to bypass Sedona. But she said, I'm coming to meet you in Prescott. I want to talk to you about an idea I had. And so she drove over from Sedona to Prescott, and she said, I want to do a show of living Navajo Master artists. And I said, really, who would that be? And she named 4 or 5 of the names that are here tonight. And we talked about it for a couple hours. And I said, well, definitely take it under advisement. But I was a little bit leery of doing a show with a gallery owner who had a stable of artists and represented the majority of them. And it not just being a show that you could have seen in their gallery and just transporting it here to the museum. Well, within a year or two, she had sold the gallery, and some new folks were running it. And she got back in touch with me and said, okay, I don't have the gallery anymore, now we can do the show, right? And I said, yeah, we can do that show. So I said, would you like to be the guest curator? And she agreed immediately. And with some help from some of her former gallery assistants and other folks, and a lot of work by the artists. And we do ask that folks we do shows with have some skin in the game. So they have a lot of responsibilities on their end, just like we do on our end, so that it's definitely a partnership. And this has been a challenge to get all 6 of them together and get them here, as you see. And here they are. Or here's half of them anyway. Emmi Whitehorse, Larry Yazzie, Shonto Begay. All right, Emmi, you came in first. You get to talk first. Or Sean, you want me to let Larry go first? Let ladies go first. Emmi, which piece would you like to talk about? The one we looked at earlier today, or pick a different one? Let's pick this one since we're right close to it, okay? So, Emmi, tell us just briefly about what you try to get across in your work, and then specifically about this piece. Not putting you on the hot seat right in the door, but we are. Very close to you.
Hello. Thank you for coming. This is a piece that sometimes when I work, everything just falls into place and it's just so easy. This is kind of one of those where everything just kind of fell into place. The color choices and then all the drawing that goes on in there. The drawing is basically a collection of dried seed pods, movements that you see, markings that you see after a bug walks through the sand, ripples of sand that happen when the water runs over the washes, stuff like that. Where I grew up, there were a lot of shells, fossilized shells, and so we used to collect the shells, impressions, and anemones, and shells, and what other things that were fossilized, and wonder. This place was a totally different landscape, before it dried out and became a high arid desert area. And so I kind of think about that as I work. And so you'll see some of the blue kind of reimagining what the land had looked like before, the waters all receded and the forests all went away. And then one of the things that I really like doing is I do all of the drawing, I do all the paint application by hand, I spread all the colors out by hand, and what you see is chalk. All the blushy color is chalk, and it's on paper. The drawing is also, finished and worked on paper, and then the paper is glued onto the canvas. I started that process as an undergraduate. We had to come up with a way to present our work during the midterms or during the finals. You had to present them in a museum area, and it had to be framed or under glass. And some of us just didn't have the money to do that. So this was my way of getting around the framing and the putting it under glass. And but also it allows people to really come up close and look at the drawing, the handwork, and get involved in the work and get lost in the work. And so as you look at it, you can kind of study the drawings in there, and you kind of put yourself in a fantastical landscape, and that's what I want people to experience when they look at the work. It's calming. It's about nature, of what was nature before we came and plowed it up and destroyed it, and so that's kind of my approach. Thank you.
Okay, and we've got the rest of the crew here, I think, or most of them anyway. Tony, let's go to you next. Which piece do you want to talk about? The one we looked at before, or the different one?
Yeah, we could talk about that one, or we could talk about the landscape, or I guess everybody's facing this way, so we could just go that way.
Yeah,
right?
we'll do this.
Thanks, Seth. I want to welcome everybody here. I'm sure everybody's been welcome, but here I go again.
So I want to introduce myself. My name is Tony Abeyta, and I live in Santa Fe. I'm also a fellow Navajo in this show, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my painting here behind me. And so, I guess a little backstory is I started painting when I was really young, like maybe around 19. My father was a painter, and so I had a really small group of people who affected and influenced me as an artist. My dad and then some local artists in the town, all of which were pretty much Navajos. A lot of them were I came from Gallup, New Mexico. If you drove to California, you go through my hometown. So I began painting, just like dabbling in watercolors and some other things. Then I started discovering oil paints, and then I started experimenting and doing more and more things. And as time went on, I went to art school. I was at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, and I've studied in a few places. But I started this painting, let me say this series. If you look at all the work in here by me, it's has some diversity, but this is from a series which I call Creation's Portal. And this is really based on the Navajo creation myth and the emergence myth of coming through 4 worlds and coming into what we are now in this world, which is, sort of this glittering world, if you have it. And this is the idea that through this emergence in mythology, in Navajo mythology, we come out and we're able to see stars, the cosmos, constellations. We bear witness to a different world, the one we're in now. And then there's all of this, these animals and birds and plants, and everything is all in celebration of the transition from one place to another. And so if you get up close on the painting, I know the museum won't let you touch it because the white gloves slap your hand and stuff, but it actually has a lot of sand in the paint. I'll mix in sand to build up the surface. So I'll create a lot of texture, a lot of surface on top of it to honor the tradition of Navajo sand painting, but also in a new and contemporary way, use it only as my own vehicle to a new language as a contemporary Navajo American Indian painter. So this is a basket, blue cornmeal. From that is this blue corn spirit that is really about life, and it is sort of proof that in the new world there will be food and sustenance for survival. The birds get to fly, get to go up into the sky. Plants get to, bloom, blossom, produce more food. Animals get to frolic amongst one another. And so I did about 6 paintings in this series, maybe not even that many. I think there's 5 of them. And then I sort of just stopped and then transitioned into different works. So it represents a really important period in how I was working and painting. And I haven't seen this painting for a little while, and it came back into my life recently, and so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put it in the show, because I really like to show it, because I never get to see these. Anyway, I think I talked a lot. I wanna let some artists talk, and here you go, Seth. Thanks.
Thank you, Seth. I talked a little bit about Peggy before she got here, so don't tell her all the bad stuff I told you. But this is Peggy Lanning, our guest curator, former owner of the Lanning Gallery, and others in Sedona, and really been a great help to us on the show. Please give a big welcome to Peggy. While I've got you here, why don't you tell a little bit about Tony's work and maybe about Shonto, since it's hanging right here next to it. And let me give you the mic, and let me hold it real close to your mouth, okay?
Okay, I do want to say that working with the Navajo artist is more than just a job, it's a way of life. And I've been doing it for over 40 years now. And Tony came to me about 30 years ago, and Tony didn't come to me, I found him. And I loved his work, and he was less than 20 years old at the time. And we've been growing together ever since. If I have any talent at all, it's kind of for seeing talent and recognizing it when I see it. And I go after it, and I've had some of these artists like David Johns for over 40 years. So it's more than a job, it's a way of life. And I've been a gallery owner in the Turquoise Tortoise Gallery, where all of these artists started with me. And we're more like family than gallery owner and artist. They have the talent. I have no talent. However, I'm pretty good with numbers, so I could take care of the other side of the street and let them do the art, and I did the running of the gallery and the staff and everything. So together we've come a long way, and they've all been with me for a long time. So thank you for acknowledging us and coming out this evening. Oh, yes, what he wanted to say is that I have always had a knack for, and it's because I feel it in my heart. It's not something you practice or you learn, but I have respect, total respect for the Navajo artist, because it comes by them so genuinely, and it's what was God given to them. And by respecting them as much as I did, I found that they respected me in return, and that's why we've been as successful as we have been together.
Right. And can you talk about why Tony's art has resonated with the people who buy it and the people who love it?
Well, Tony has some collectors. All of these artists do. They have collectors that have been collecting even from me in my gallery for 30 and 40 years. Tony has been at least over 30 years. And so they have watched him grow up. I can remember when he first came to the gallery after I found him in a Native American show on the street, so to speak. He came to my gallery and he had on short pants. And they were, some of you may remember the old 50-pound flour sacks with the Indian written on them, printed on them. Well, he had his short pants made of those, of that flour sack. And he came in and just put his work all on the floor. And he was just as happy as a lark. And I was so impressed with this young man that was barely out of his teens, even if he was, and the talent that he had. So that's the strongest knack that I do have, is learning to work with them and learning to respect them and learning to see talent when I see it. So that's my greatest asset.
Can you talk about Shonto for a minute?
Shonto is so colorful in every way. That's all I can say. He really has been very strong in my life. I represented him at one time, and what I loved most about him was all of his old cars that he had that were absolutely wonderful, interesting, tantalizing, and they were just, they would speak to you. And when he paints a figure, if you look at his figures and his paintings, you will see they are so much more than just figures, stick figures. They are not. They're human beings, they're human eyes, they're human animals, they're animals, they are wonderful. So I'm very proud to have represented Shonto.
Shonto, where do you want to go?
Let's go here.
Okay, that'll make it easy. Thank you very much.
Since I'm so colorful here. Good afternoon. Yate, Nzonga has a Kaigi Jinkoe. Cartersville, Georgia, hold Yed and another seat near Baje. Yate. But I just said in my own language is welcome. Thank you for coming out to this place in Cartersville. And on our behalf as well, thank you. I'm 1/6 of the Navajo Masters. So I'll never leave home without my Etch-a-Sketch. My own homage to my own people's art, sand painting is this. It is kind of sand, and I can do it drawing it very temporary, just like the sand painting is as a Gila mandala. And I just make it drawing here, and of course I don't expect it to last. It is a healing, and it has all that energy of rejuvenation. And anyway, Don't let me forget that. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and that's where my studio is. I radiate out of there. I'm a member of the Bitterwater clan among my people. The Salt clan is my father, my maternal grandfather's Many Goats clan, and my paternal grandfather, it's not Jimmy. So every time you meet anybody, especially with fellow Navajo, you introduce yourself in that way so it connects everything. It's kind of like a nice social connection, deeper than a social connection. So that's what I want to say about that. This painting here, Chasing Shadows No More. It's pretty much what it is. It's not chasing shadows no more. In the old days when it was going, it was really going. You know, it's either going from one trouble to another, I suppose. That's the shadow. And so right now, it's just sitting out there outside of Flagstaff somewhere. One day I found it and I painted it. I drew it. I took it back to my studio and painted from the drawing. The landscape, of course, in the background is my own, you know, unrealistic, you know, unconventional realism. And the way I paint, with a lot of strokes and lines and circles and dots, I always explain this as a visual chant. Like again, like the great ceremonies of the Diné people, you know, it's consisted of beautiful chants, beautiful syllables to words, words to sentences, and sentences to paragraphs, and all in all. So it is a ceremony. Now, with each painting, I feel like, you know, it's every stroke, every line is a syllable in those ancient words. So I try to see my work like that because the impetus of my work doesn't come from the pursuit of fame or seeing other people getting rich or whatever. It was about staying alive. Growing up in a boarding school, a very brutal government institution, you know, that was a way of staying sane and alive by creating my own realism, my own reality on the margins of my homework. And that's where I lived, you know, safely away from the brutal days of the time. So the painting sprung from that, plus working as a sand painter with the elders when I was very little, being drafted into that. So the very first painting, the very first line, the very first colorful thing, the line I drew was on the sand as a healing mandala. And that's why I coming from the great paternal elders of medicine and the healers. And all my maternals are weavers. And I was a shepherd. I grew up a shepherd. And being all alone out there in the valley, being alone, sitting there alone with the sheep and in the distance, and the sheepdog, and the sound of nature. This is what also brought forth all of that sense of creativity. Of course, also living in a hogan with no running water, no electricity, no television. You know, it was all very story-filled, oral songs, and just doing art on whatever could receive a mark, including the dirt floor with a stick. And the shadows, the lines are created by the light of the flame of the kerosene lamp at night. So that's where it began. And then somewhere along the way, at a government boarding school, I came on Etch-a-Sketch. And the boys, I remember, dabble with it a little bit, and then they toss it aside because there was just really not much you can do except maybe some stairwells and geometric stuff. They said, but I learned how to do that. I was intrigued by their own machines, and I just went on at it. And today, like I say, I have an all size. In fact, one time I even had an all Etch-a-Sketch show, which I didn't last too long. But I like the images that I do is about painting about, with this particular one painting about nobility that is no more. And everything's at rest. Even the buildings are ruins in the way back is a remnant of another cultures. You know, so it was just a sense of quietude, retirement, you know, chasing shadows no more. Just like the truck scenes, the highway scenes I do, which I really enjoy, because out where we live, communities and families are far apart, connected by dirt roads, graded road, 2-lane highways, So we spend a lot of time on there. So a lot of my images and a lot of my thoughts and songs and plans and everything comes off the road. So that's the, I'm always traveling. I'm always traveling, not literally, but in my head. So that's where all of these come from.
So how much is this a stand-in for a person?
How much is this a stand for a person? Well, the person is still running. This one isn't. It's all ventilated, and the only thing I found inside the glove compartment was an old 8-track tape. So,
Who was it? Who was the 8-track tape?
it was an old country musician I really like. His name was Ferrell Husky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I found.
Thank you. Let's go next to David Johns. David, where would you like to be? Right here? You guys are making it too easy on him here.
Get behind the
This is David Johns from Winslow, Arizona, everybody.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge today, this day that the first dawn, the first blue sky, the first evening that's going to come upon us, the first night that has never been seen, that we're going to be under. So I really appreciate, I want to acknowledge the Creator for that we sing this day, and then we going to keep on going to enjoy this life. And then again, I'd like to acknowledge that the first indigenous people that live here on this land here, I've been told that there's some mounds that are around here.
Yes.
And I wanted to acknowledge that too. The people that lived here on this land, they were the caretakers of this land. I want to acknowledge that too. So Seth called my name, so I'm not to recall it. My people will say, they say don't really call out your name. Then my grandmother used to tell me that it's good to acknowledge your clan. At times, do that. So this is what I'm going to do. My clan is Ashche, Kiaani, Bashashin, Fotsani Dashache, Hanisani Dashanada. I wanted to greet you all at this time for your presence here. And I wanted to thank everybody, whoever's going to come into this museum and to look at this fine artwork throughout the month that's going to be hanging here. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Seth. I want to thank Peggy. I want to thank Isabel and all the crew that help us. I want to thank Lisa too, and Ken, and all the employees of the museum. They've been taking care of us yesterday and today, and so I just want to thank them at this time. And yeah, I'm the last, I think I'm the last generation, I always say that, in front of my family, my kids, my grandkids. And they would look up to me. I'm the last generation that never seen, when I was growing up, we never saw silverwares. We never saw tables, chairs to sit on, to eat. Never saw plates. And I was brought up by my grandparents. My mom died when I was just like 3.5 years of age. So my grandmother's the one that brought me up. And I had a lot of medicine people in my family. My grandpa, they were medicine people. So I grew up in that way, and we had a lot of horses, and actually my name is David John Standing Horse. That's my name. So that came from my dad's grandfather's name, Standing Horse. So that came. My dad was the first grandchild of Jesus and the Standing Horse. So that's where the name comes from. So I just wanted to say that I'm the last generation of that. I think that we never utilize like the way people eat today, the way we eat today. We had nothing. There's only one pot right there, tortillas and tea, and no kinds of soda or nothing like that, you know. So I grew up like that. So and I started doing artwork when I was in grade school, drawing with crayons, pencil, and then charcoal, like from the ash, you know. It kind of was hard for me to get paper, and, you know. I started out like that, and then I noticed that I was told from my teachers that, hey, you're doing good, you can do this, hey, you're something, you know. So I grew up like that, and I did artwork through high school, and then I studied at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, and that's where I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts. And then in 1996, I was awarded honorary doctorate in humane letters for being an artist. So, and I did a lot of portraits. I did a lot of portraits in my life, and I had an older brother. He passed on recently, and he was really good too. And he used to tell me, you go to that store over there. When you go over there, make sure you study Grandpa over there. So I used to go over there a lot. We had a grandfather that, boy, his face was really wrinkled, eyes and all over. Yeah, study Grandpa, do some drawing. So that's how I started to do that. So a lot of my portraits or my imagination. I did a lot of imaginary work. So this painting here is an abstraction. And portraits, you have to go through a lot of stage. Seems like you have to go through a process in order to develop a whole concept, a whole figurative work. And abstraction is kind of like a little bit different. And a lot of my abstraction, I don't really know what my plans are on that surface. That's how I start work, and I just start throwing paint on it. And but I think about a lot of things from my past and what I've heard about where my origin is, and that's where a lot of my thinking goes when I paint. And so, and then some songs or some prayers that I heard, and that kind of, I don't know why those things comes around when I start working. Maybe because it's telling me that, and it tried to energize me in that manner. And this portrait pertains to nature. It pertains to nature. The way I heard through stories that how the universe came about, how the earth came about, how the stars came about, the sun, the moon, the mountains, the water, the oceans, the rivers, and how the earth and how the universe, how they communicate. So the title of this painting is manifestation landscape. So it went through some processes, how it was developed through certain stories that I've heard, and then from where I'm coming from, my clan is like Ashche clan, a place where there's a red sand at the bottom of a canyon. So that's the title. That's how you say Ashche. So it kind of pertains to that too. So how the sun and the universe communicate, where there's rain. So that's it brings rain. It brings a kind of air. So there's a movement. So this pertains to that story that I have heard, and so I want to say that much now. Thanks.
So let me get it right then. Dr. David John Standing Horse. Yes?
I'm a chief too.
Okay. Does that go before or after doctor?
Before the doctor.
That's what I thought. Chief Dr. David John Standing Horse. We got it right. Let's redo all these labels. Tell me about David's work and why you love it.
Well, David was the actual first Navajo artist that I represented, even before we both moved up northern Arizona, and we now live in Sedona. But in Glendale, Arizona, I opened a little shop and a little gallery called the Turquoise Tortoise, and David was my very first Navajo artist. So that's over 40 years ago. So you can see these are long-term relationships. Our children know each other. Our sons went to U of A together and studied architecture. So we have a long history behind us, and I have admired his work all of these years. And it's wonderful to keep the same artist year in and year out because we grow together. So thank you, David.
So in our permanent collection, we have one of those portraits that David was talking about. It's just around the corner in the Contemporary Gallery, and a very beautiful piece, but very different from this work. How was the transition from when David was doing that kind of work to this work, and how did the collectors react?
Well, I didn't make the transition, David did. And I fell in love with his portraits, but when he began to paint the abstracts, I knew I had to do something. I went across the hall and opened a larger gallery that was more contemporary. And in that gallery was David John's abstracts. So I wanted to honor both of them, but it's hard to hang them right next to each other. But as a result, we're still together through all those years until I recently sold the galleries, but now I'm retired and here I am still doing it.
And we're darn glad you are. I forgot to mention at the beginning, these very tall sculptures are a little bit top heavy, and we've got some security screws on them, but please be careful if you're moving on or around them. And the person who would appreciate that most is the sculptor who did them, Larry Yazzie. And Larry, I'd like to ask you, where would you like to go?
Right here in front of this bronze.
This bronze, okay. And let us get the camera where we can get a shot of you for posterity here. So be very careful around these, please. And we'll let Lindsay get in position. And so Larry, you do both bronze and stone sculpture, and maybe you could just talk about both of them that are close by here, the bronze and the stone, either the bison or the fire, whichever you like. But go ahead, and if you can kind of face the camera.
I'd like to say good evening.
Hold it real close to the mouth.
Good evening.
Much better.
Like my Navajo relatives, my Diné relatives, let me introduce myself to you and my clan. I'm Nashtej Topmaha, which is Zuni Edgewater clan. That's my maternal clan.
Speak up.
Yeah. And my paternal clan is Nakhaidane. It's a Mexican Navajo clan. And then my grandfather on my mother's side is a clan. That's Minigoat's clan. And then my grandfather on my father's side is Kia'ani. That's Towering House clan. Those are the 4 clans that I represent. And when I was going to go off to school and thinking about a career, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But before I left home, my elders told me. They said, "You're going to go off and get an education, and you're going to learn how to do something. You're going to have a career, but your first education is learning who you are." He said, "This is your clan. This is your father's clan, and that's your grandfather's clans. As long as you know that, you always know who you are, your foundation." And so I always remember them telling me that. And then like David and Shonto, I grew up with my grandmother. My father died at a very when I was about 5 years old, I think. And she lived a traditional life. She went everywhere on horseback. At the time, we used wagons, and there were sparse times when there was no water, when there weren't rains, and so we had to survive. And at the time, my grandmother moved around within about a 40-mile radius. She had places she lived in wintertime, springtime, summertime, and she had livestock. And so that was part of my responsibility as a little kid to watch the livestock. And so I grew up close to Third Mesa, right across from Third Mesa, the Hopi Reservation. And so I have a lot of fond memories of my childhood when I was little. And from there, when my father passed on, my mother remarried into the coastal tribes of Washington State. And so I left from the Southwest and grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And so there was sort of a culture shock. But I was really fortunate to grow up next to a river, next to the ocean, mountains, right below the Olympics, a place called Port Andrews, Washington, and saw a lot of beauty and lived around it. And so I guess becoming an artist is from all the places that I've been able to live. And so I feel very fortunate, and I just want to say thank you to the museum staff here, Seth. I want to say thank you to Peggy and to Kimberly and to Isabel and to everybody that was responsible for helping us put the show together. And I'm honored to be here amongst all of you. And I just wanted to let you know that this piece here is called, in our language we say Shikhujo, and that basically means a feeling of harmony. And that's something that we all strive to have in our life. we all want to have that feeling every day. And the woman, I'm told by my elders, is represented everywhere in nature. We have the mother, our mother the earth, the water represented as a woman too, and then even fire is represented as a woman. And so we have the nurturing spirits that take care of us every day in our life. And then we all come from a woman. If it wasn't for a woman, we wouldn't have life. And so a lot of the sculptures that I've done over the years have always have been women. And that's particularly because it was my mother that raised me, and it was my grandmother that raised me. And so they've always been a strong in my life, and I owe a great deal to them. And this piece here first was originally created in stone, and there was a mold made off of it by the foundry that I work with. And once the mold is established, and it's a two-part mold, and once the mold's established, they can cast bronze into it. It's quite a long process, but everything, all the bronzes that I've ever created, except for one, have all been created from original stone pieces. This piece over here, representing the fire, is made out of the stone here is called calcite, and then this is the stone here is an Indiana limestone, and then there's alabaster, and there's Virginia steatite and Vermont marble. And sometimes I put different stones together like that. And this right here, this represents in our language we say che, and by that we say grandfather. We have a relationship with all the elements, and we have respect for the grandpa here, and no matter where you go in the world, you'll always find fire. It's always in our ceremonies. We're told that there's a lot of healing from this fire, from the smoke, from the ashes, and our elders had that kind of knowledge and passed it on to us. And so I over the years I create different things, and sometimes I do them intentionally, sometimes I don't do them intentionally. But I do thank you for your time and your patience.
All right, Baje, you've hidden out till the last. Where are you?
I'm up here.
Okay. Where do you want to go?
Across the river.
All the way across. All right, that's a man who's challenging everybody.
I think everybody's asleep.
That's all right, move around. It's a good thing we got a lot of shepherds with us here tonight. Bang, 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 bang. And Peggy, don't go far. I want you to wrap this up when we get to the end here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Baje Whitethorne.
Cheers to all of you. Your hearts are generous. Appreciate the town of Cartersville. It's wonderful to be here amongst the energy of the community itself and all of you. I'm a person or an artist that started with the simplicity of art. I was taught to understand simplicity was beautiful. And every line I drew evolved into something that has a lot of energy. So as you see this painting here, it's titled The Healing Songs. And then as you heard of my fellow artisans, my brothers, my relatives that are here, it's wonderful to be a part of them, be in a grouping of 6. And I've learned to love all of them over the years, our relationships and our families. I think we all know each other as brothers and grandfathers and uncles, and you know, we're a family. We're taught to understand that, and I'm going to say my clans. My clans are, I'm a bamboo clan, the reed clan, and my father is the yucca fruit, which is, and then the many goats, and then also the many goats again. I've learned to understand. My father was raised by the many goats. In Navajo would be Lokatanen. Lo Shkazoi, Oshishi, Islam Shiche, Aro A Shinala, Islam Bedini, Ara Shiche, Islam Lovinessa. So that's me. And this painting is about healing. I have experienced a time in my life where I was physically told, or it's very emotional for me to talk about it, but the doctors told me that I couldn't be, you know, who I was anymore. So I was able to turn to alternative healing. So songs of harmonization, songs of the world, as you know, is a healing. And then art has been my therapy. It was a place where I could go to experiment, get to know what I can do with a simple line, with simple color and shapes. So this is, if you look at this picture, there's plenty of lines. There's fine lines, bold lines, and a lot of movement. Because from being bedridden to running 8 miles was 8 years for me. So once I realized when I was bedridden, I could still move my hands. So as a kid, I always drew. And my grandfather was a farrier, horse person. And he had songs, and he had knowledge of horses and also healing. So my upbringing is from the Navajo reservation to eastern New Mexico, which is a little town called Portales, New Mexico, Tater Town. I grew up there as a young kid that drove the trailer for the bales of hay that the university football players would load up for me, and I took it to the barn. And it's been a wonderful life, you know, to grow up, to go back home to the Navajo reservation and be part of the Navajo culture, and then also transition on a train from Arizona to Mexico, New Mexico, and doing art. My grandfather drew horses, and that's what I wanted to do. Seth, can you come over here?
Yes, sir.
You'd be my grandfather. And what I would do is when he drew horses for people for identification or registrations, you know, and I would stand there and watch what he did. And he drew wonderful horses with all the markings and gave them to people. And I was 5 years old, and I would pull on his jeans almost daily and said, hey, Chiche, I would say, or grandpa, you know. And I would say, can you teach me how to do what you do? And then he would say, he would push me away because he was busy.
Busy.
And I would never do it again. And I'd say, hey, show me, check. She'd say, Grandpa, Grandpa. And but one day he puts me aside and he goes, I'm going to show you how to draw. You watch and pay attention. You like potatoes, don't you? He says, and I say, yeah, sure. I like them fried. And anyway, you know, you can fix it. And he says, okay, think of potatoes. We're going to make a little potato for that little head, and then a big potato for the big body. And then he drew his wooden figures, you know, like what. So it would be, imagine this, a big potato, a little potato, and then a zigzag for the hair.
French fries for the legs.
Yes, and then the big potato for the body. 4 slashes for the tail and 4 slashes for the leg, and a hook on the bottom with eyes because you want your horse to see you, and then a nose for your horse to smell you, and ears to hear you. And he's got to eat too, like you, and potatoes, he said. So this is how I started practicing that figure of a horse. And I drew this horse everywhere. I think, like Shonto said, we didn't have paper, you know, we didn't have pencil. Oh, he gave me one of his little pencils that he had. He said, this is all I got. And he gave me some pieces of paper that he worked with. And he folded that little paper, a sheet of paper, into 32 little squares. And he told me to practice on each square, in each square. So I did. And he said, well, if it gets full, the little horses flip it over. So I would do the same thing. And I did it until the paper ran out and the pencil disappeared. Well, actually, I took the pencil and drew horses on the legs of the wooden furniture, legs of the bed, under the table. Yeah, and then my mom would say, you know, oh, beautiful horses. My dad said the same thing. All these little horses, they're everywhere. And then the pencil ran out. I had, these are the hogans that we live in. You see all the wood, the gray areas? These are all the wood, you know, juniper trees. So I drew horses on those things. Little horses everywhere because there was no paper. So when I found my pencil disappeared, I found a nail. Then I found wooden stove, not metal stove, you know, painted with porcelain, what do we call it, the paint, enamel paint, painted white, and I started scratching my horses. And my dad was saying, oh, let Mom see that. And then I would do all the coffee pots, the stoves, and everything that was metal. I drew horses on it. And he would say, he'd shake his head and say, oh, all these wonderful horses. Beware, he said. So he liked my horses, and I ran out of surfaces. The frying pan, the coffee pot, the cups, the dishes, everything had horses. The stove. And then one day, he drives his truck home. My dad parks in front of the house because he had been working somewhere on the railroad or somewhere. So I go to the back of his truck vehicle, and on the passenger side on the fender, I drew a scratchy horse. And I said, Dad, I drew a horse on the truck. So he goes out there, and he didn't see the pretty horse there. So that was my beginning to draw lines and shapes and added color over the years. And my sense of healing, I would lay on the floor in my house, and my kids would lay around me and I would draw. And then they would say, how come you're laying on the floor? There's a table. So they buy me a drawing table, but it took me a while to learn to get back up there and learn how to walk again. So this is my take of what is simple in shape form. And the landscaping is, you go out there and appreciate the colors and the bouncing, the movement of the landscape. That's my inspiration. So, here we are. Thank you.
And then somebody said, Baje, it's time for dinner. Peggy, if you would, just a couple of comments about our last two artists we had up here, Larry and Baje, and we'll give you the last word.
Well, I'd like to start with Larry, since he was the one. But I must say, I have known Larry and have watched his art and watched him have his 4 boys that are beautiful young men now. In fact, our 2 older boys went to college together, and that was pretty wonderful at that time. But anyway, it's so very interesting to see Larry work in different stones, and he can take just what I would see as a rock or a block and carve something wonderful from it. So we have always honored the talent that these Native Americans have, and that's something, if you don't live in Arizona, you may not realize, but there is talent all around us. All we have to do is stop and see it. I just recently went to Baje's studio, and I might say he has taken his little place on the floor and has a 2-story beautiful studio with lights everywhere, and you can't imagine the number of paintings. He is a consistent artist, and he loves his work, and it shows in his work. He paints life, I would have to say. He comes very near painting life, and it's been such a pleasure to work with him. And it's such a pleasure to see all of you, and that you have come out, and I thank you so very much. And I certainly thank the museum and the staff for promoting this show and making it possible for the Navajos to grow even more. And we would welcome you to Arizona. Please come visit us.
Peggy, if you'd stay up here one more second, if I could get all the artists and Peggy to come up front. We get all the artists to make their way up to the front, please. We can let Emmi through, please. And Chief Doctor. So how about a round of applause for our Navajo Masters?